Hello, and welcome to another episode of Brand Retro. Today on the podcast, we have founder and principal of Propr Design, Bobby Gillespie. Bobby is a brand growth consultant, author of a forthcoming book, Build Your Own Brand Like You Give a Shit, and the founder and principal of Propr Design, a Baltimore-based B2B brand growth agency. Bobby and the Propr team advise on and implement strategies that help B2B brands scale through better positioning, messaging, design, web, and marketing. They measure ultimate success by enabling and empowering their clients to succeed without them. Bobby, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we were talking a little bit prior to hitting record here about kind of geeking out over the brand kind of process and in some client scenarios and that kind of stuff. Before we go too deep in that, tell us a little bit about kind of your journey, your experience, and kind of how you got to the point of starting Propr Design.
Well, after about 14, 15 years of working in-house, working at agencies, I found myself as the creative director of an agency, helped grow it. And I kind of ran that ran its course. And I kind of realized at the time that I'm a terrible employee. Too many ideas, too disruptive. I get too excited about what we're doing, but also I'm incredibly focused on doing what's best for the team and the client. And that was one of the catalysts for me starting Propr was, seeing how, the underbelly of the agency world, how it's focused too much on transactions, focused too much on getting as much out of the client and the team as possible, and then consolidating the rewards for that to a few select folks. So I got bit by the entrepreneurial bug. I was also, kind of felt that if I'm going to bust my butt, it's going to be for me and my family and my team, right? Like we're all in this together. So I really kind of hedged my bets and said, there's a better way. We can work in our clients' best interest. We can work and put our teams' lives in balance, substitute or replace frustration with fulfillment, and really, do great things, have a successful business, help our clients be more successful, and have a positive impact all around. Now we're in our 8th year doing it. And, that's non-negotiable. All those things are non-negotiable for us, and we're having a blast.
Yeah. So what's interesting about this is it's like you're reciting to me my own journey. We're in our 7th year and our story is very similar. And it's not I don't care what other companies do. They can do their own thing. They can do it how they want to do it. But the gap or the opportunity that I saw, at least for myself in the industry, is that everybody was already bought into this traditional way of doing things and nobody really questions it. If this is how a traditional agency does it and they have this many people on the project and they have this many figureheads involved and there's this many proofs and it's this much, nobody ever questions it. They just ride along. And what's funny to me is then those relationships turn and burn. They flip in a matter of 2 to 3 years and everybody's mad about it. Like, I didn't have a good experience over here, so now I'm going to move on to the next agency. And it's like, right, but you're not really addressing the reason why it didn't work. You're not asking the question as to what role you played in it. And having some frontline experience in that, I really looked at it and thought, well, I think I'm not going to say a better way, but I think there's a different way to do this that addresses the needs of the clients that don't necessarily want to just keep writing checks forever. And again, like, I'm all about growing the business. We got to make money, but at the same time, I think we have to reassess and shift our focus to be about the collective, to be about the team, to be about the client deliverables, and to like hit home runs, not just go project to project until somebody gets sick of working with us. And that seems to be, in many ways, that traditional cycle that people are accustomed to.
And it's too much dog, gospel in the industry. And I couldn't agree more. I was talking to a colleague who is the president of a PR firm. I'm not saying how, this year we're focused on scaling. We have our shit together, which is something I say every year, but we have our shit together enough to scale Propr this year. And that's what we're looking to do. And she said, oh, it must be really hard to scale your agency, doing project work. I said, we don't do project work. We're an extension of our clients' teams. So our clients work with us and we structure our engagements as basically a monthly billing. And we have multiple goals. We have new priorities. We pivot all the time. But, the biggest goal is to help them establish a foundation, uncomplicate their organization, to get more out of their brand, get more out of their marketing, to get more out of their business dev. And she was just like, wow, like no one does it that way. And I'm like, I'm sure other people do it that way, and our clients work with us for, 12 to 24 months. And one of the goals we have of, all these metrics that people measure, of course we're in business to make money, right? But we measure success when our clients are empowered to no longer need us, right? So we want to supply our clients with clarity on who they are, clarity on who their customers are, where to meet them, what message to bring to them, right? Connect with them based on purpose, values, principles, right? No gimmicks, no nonsense, no trickery, no clever, taglines and slogans, direct language in the right tone of voice. And that's how we get these great, results for our clients. And, anybody hears me talking, I always say, keep it real, right? Keep it real, be yourself. Don't be afraid of that, and I know firsthand, I was brutalized in, the school system in Philly because I had my own ideas. I didn't sit there and shut up and do as I was told. And that's, I've been that way my whole career. And again, that's why I'm a terrible employee. But it's what difference we can make for our clients because we're not just following, the gospels of inbound or outbound or ABM, like whatever philosophy people say is the one true philosophy on brand building and marketing and growth. It's like, no, of course the formulas are similar, but let's start by identifying your unique variables and then plug those into the formulas to get you those outcomes that you really desire. And that's what makes it really fulfilling for us, is really understanding our clients first before jumping into pushing pixels and, unleashing marketing. Like, let's really clarify who you are so we can say there was, those right things to the right people in the right place. Yeah, and you're connecting and competing and communicating based on values. And that's what people relate to. Right?
Yep.
We know that people don't relate to your latest features. That's a commodity aspect. Or your pricing. That's a commodity aspect, right? The cheapest gas, right? The cheapest milk. That's, people just want what's good enough there. But when you can connect with them based on you shared principle, you can have something more authentic. Comes time for that final conversion. There's no trickery involved, right?
They're part of the ride as well. Like if you
Mm-hmm.
build an authentic brand and you use their input and their unique variables and you use their secret sauce of what makes them unique, if you use that as part of the equation, as part of the solution, they're not only part of the success, but they're so ingrained and committed to that direction that it's
And they've self-selected. They said that I want to engage with this brand, right? There's some brands like Amazon where we begrudgingly support an awful company, right? But give us, there's a bookstore that opened next door to the office. And I told him, I was like, you guys should, just giving them free advice, which I like to do unsolicited, but I like, don't compete on Amazon with price. Like, don't try to be Amazon. Compete on your values. And this community will support that. And they'll pay more,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And they'll self-select, like, this is for me. And it's the same thing. They also say, this brand is not for me. because I don't align with those values. Right. And so when we talk about competing and connecting and communicating based on your values, like you're not for everybody. A coach I have said to me, he goes, Bobby, you're one of those dudes that people like you or they hate you. And I pause at that and I'm like, people don't like me. And I'm like, actually, that's true because I'm not for everybody. And the same thing with any brand out there, persona, brand, whatever. But the people that do appreciate me and like me and all that stuff will come to me. And the ones that don't want to hear direct, colorful language, I'll tell my clients their baby's ugly, essentially, right? And not enough people will do that. But the ones that don't want to hear that will stay far away. But the ones that are open to being told they're wrong or there's a different way that they haven't considered will definitely appreciate us. So that's what we want our clients to do as well.
Yeah, and I think most people, I mean, we still love that baby, but they know their baby's ugly and
Mhm.
they need somebody to tell them that. And that's one of the things. So everything you just said there is honestly one to one spot on with cyber dogs and how we do things. It's interesting. It's interesting that you're doing it so similar or I'm doing it similar to you, however you want to look at it.
Dude, it's why we're going to get along because we share values, right? We believe in our principled way of doing things.
But
And
tell me if it's like this for you. For me, it doesn't seem profound. It seems common sense. So like when we first started doing it and I'm like, I can't be the only one. Like, I can't live in a world that like I'm the only one who thinks this way because it's so ridiculous. Like it's so common sense.
Mhm.
But then you start to kind of observe and kind of realize that the traditional marketing machine,
Mhm.
it's just rolling and it's conditional thinking. And people are just like, well, why would I question it? And of course, guys like me and you are like, why wouldn't you question it? Like it's not working. I mean, it works for some people. It works. I mean, good for those people.
Aspects of it that are appropriate for certain situations and scenarios and clients. But again, you can't subscribe to dogma.
But if you're
Right?
one of those people where it doesn't work, then by all means ask the question. Like, because if it's
Yeah.
not working for you, ask the question. And that's what was kind of like hard for me to wrap my mind around at the beginning. I'm like, I can't believe this isn't common sense for everybody. But it's
I
taken me a while to kind of observe and look at this and go, some people it's not common sense to and they don't care. And those aren't my people.
right, right, right. They don't share your values, right? So we don't get along, and that's okay, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm like you, like I'm just, constantly in amazement at how this approach it seems so novel and it's such a differentiator for us. But it seems so obvious to me that this is a better way for client services, right? Like we have a great responsibility as the leaders of our companies to really lead by example, you know? And I mean, I've had tons of jobs that have really informed me on how I would never want to operate once I got to leadership roles. And I've always found myself in a leadership role again because I'm a terrible employee and I just rise to the top and can wreak havoc. So good thing I started my own company. But, seeing how, we need to provide for our families and our team as well, right? So all the stuff I want out of my job, my career, I'm committed to providing that to my team. And I was talking to a fellow the other day, another marketing guy, and he was telling me that, he was working, this B2B tech guy in marketing. That's kind of where we focus. And he said that he had a little side hustle that he was spinning up. And once the company found out about it, they fired him. And it wasn't a conflict or anything like that because he was working in house.
Yep.
But they fired him. And I was like, that's awful. And it's awful because the, their mentality is you're lucky you work here. right? And ugh, that's just so toxic. I probably don't say it enough, but I'm lucky I have my team. Like they owe me nothing. I owe them. That approach to leadership for me, as Eisenhower said, leaders put their people in a position to be successful. They don't tell them what to do. So when my team isn't successful, as long as they're trying, and then it's my fault. I look at myself first. And, I think that, about, I don't know, sometime in my 20s when I was struggling big time with my career, I read a book. I wish I can remember what it was, but it talked about your legacy. And what really ingrained in my mind and my being was that why wait until you're an old man to care about your legacy? Start writing it down. So I started caring about my legacy, right? What's my legacy? And when you think about it that way, that's really what's informed me about what brand means. Brand has so many meanings, right? But for me and my company, and what we really get our clients to believe in is your brand is your reputation, right? So if you have a janky logo, that's part of your reputation. If you treat people poorly, that's part of your reputation. If your CEO parks in a handicap spot and they're perfectly able, that's your reputation. If you're firing people, if clients are suing you, if you're a taker, right? Taking more than you give, it jive with the symbiotic nature of the universe, right? It's giving and getting. If you're taking advantage of folks, if you're burning your team out, if you're talking down to people, if your website has the wrong messaging, if you're using gimmicks, like all those things are your brand. You get the brand you deserve, not the one you want, right? My boy from West Philly, where I grew up, he grew up in Overbrook. I grew up in Southwest Philly, but he slapped somebody on TV. It's reputation. Before that night, could you ever imagine? No, right? You got to be mindful of that stuff, because it
Yeah,
has a huge impact.
your brand and your reputation can be a house of cards if you're not careful with it. And I mean, I talk to my clients about it all the time and go down to the details with it, you know? It's everything. It's how you look, it's how you treat people, it's how you present yourself, it's all part of the package. And I'm not going to say what aspects are right or wrong. You have to tell me what fits your brand, but at the end of the day, you have to be aware of all those pieces. And I think for a lot of companies and a lot of, clients, they don't understand the reach of a brand. They think it's maybe just the logo. They think it only goes as far as maybe the branded polo shirt they're wearing that Friday. And it's like, no, it's everything. And it's so much more than that. And it's every little detail that adds up
Mhm.
to be substantial and to be special about that brand. So like to your point with the, the Oscars, like, yeah, that guy, I don't know. I don't know if he'll recover from that. He kicked his brand in the
No one's going
nuts
to forget
in
it.
a major way.
No one's
Absolutely.
going
And
to forget it.
he's going to be suspect forever because of this.
Yeah, I mean, you think about, some of these mega brands that have insane PR budgets to manage the bad press or to put a spin on something. And, like why spend all his resources pushing a false narrative, putting up a facade, right? Like Pepsi saying that, you know, X percentage of their plastic bottles are made to be recycled. Yet almost none are because the technology doesn't really exist. But meanwhile, you look around at all the waterways and, roadsides and streets and just littered with their products. But they push these PR messages instead of owning it because what do they care about? It's just that infinite growth at all costs. And they don't care what damage they cause, but they're going to spend, millions and millions of dollars a year on PR to try to whitewash it, try to distract you. Look over here. Don't look at the man behind the curtain. Look over here.
Right.
But like it's a horror show. You know, and I think a lot of our peers and our clients, the commentary on the industry in general is that we're all the information and stories and books and magazines glorify, these corporations that are doing more harm than good. And, pushing these stories like overnight success and humble beginnings, but it's not real. It sounds cool that we started in a garage, but, starting in a garage with $250 million in seed money, right? Like, let's just be real, right?
That overnight success piece, I'm all for it if it can happen, but what the part we have to remember, it doesn't happen to everybody. Most entrepreneurs, most business owners, most people who find a way to succeed, there was a grind there. There was work, there was long hours, there was timing, there was maybe even a little bit of luck. But
Good luck.
but the story that we're told is that, it's this overnight thing. And then as marketers, we get asked that question like, well, how can I make this go viral? Well, you don't make stuff go viral. Like, unless your last name's Kardashian or something, like you're not making anything go viral. Like
And
if it's
what
gonna happen,
price
it's
did
gonna
they
happen.
pay for that fame, though? Right? Like, what did they have
Exactly.
to do? Right? Like,
Exactly. But
humiliate
I think
themselves on a regular basis for money.
but I think they forget that like you said, what's the price to be paid to try to fast track it versus trying to build something authentic. And I personally, I'm always on the side of the authenticity because I think that's unwavering. I think if you can find an authentic way to build that foundation, you don't have to look over your shoulder. You don't have to
Right.
remember what you said yesterday. You don't have to
Right.
try to keep your shit straight because if you're authentic and you're real and you're honest about it, it's going to naturally just take care of itself.
I'm a bit of an urban hippie. I love, I grew up in the city. I live in the city, but I love the trees. I love the wilderness. And I was reading a book a couple of years ago. It was just a lot about how trees grow in the wild. And for those who don't know, when a tree, a big, mature tree has a lot of babies around it, and the babies may be 10 foot tall, but also 100 years old, and they're growing in a healthy, sustainable fashion. They're not rushing, right? And one day that mother tree, it's going to be her time to go down. And those babies will compete for that space, right? But they have the right foundation. They've grown not too fast. They've been patient. They've done everything the right way. And that's their opportunity to be the next, Titan.
Yep.
Then you think about how a tree grows in a lot. A house comes down in West Baltimore and a tree, seeds end up there from the birds and the tree grows. And in 10 years, it's 35 foot tall, right? That tree is not going to be 500 years old. The tree's going to probably grow for another 30 years and fall over. Why? Grew too fast. And that's what the hacks get you. That's what the gimmicks get you. Right? If you want to build something that's sustainable, that's healthy, that's scalable, you got to do it the right way. You got to start at the foundation, focus on what your purpose is, what your values are, have them guide your decision-making process, have them put the parameters around what's appropriate for your brand. Resist the urge to make a quick buck. It's going to hurt your growth. It's going to limit your potential. So that tree, yeah, you might have a nice, 25, 30 foot tree on the street, but it's not destined for much longer than that. I'd rather see, a tree that, a brand that's 100 years old. We look at in Good to Great, awesome book. It talks about how, and I don't have the data, but, companies used to last for like 25, 30 years for the modern times. Now companies come and go. in years, fail in years. And sure, that could be a strategy and plan for some entrepreneurs. But, I think most would rather see their brand exist beyond them, right? Have something that contributes to their legacy, that can pass off. But what they're passing off is like, hey, you know what? Our leader set the vision for this brand, and we're going to continue that vision into the future. And everybody knows what the company stands for. The entire team is built around shared principles, shared values, clear purpose, clear mission. And with that, everyone's just kind of on the journey, moving to that spot on the horizon line together. And, that is a healthy approach to business and healthy approach to really growing your revenue, right? Because you're going to attract the right people, both internally and as customers. And that's really the name of the game.
I think most companies, though, or at least young entrepreneurs, they get caught up in the monkey see, monkey do mindset of
Sure.
if they see, company X is super successful, I'm going to mimic what they're doing and try to follow that path so that I can catch up to them or become them or whatever it is. And to your point, I don't know that you want to do that. I don't know that you want to, I know you want the success of, but I don't know if you want to morph into who they are, because once you get there and you find out that your foundation is shaky, you probably can't sustain it. You're probably not going to love what you're doing. There's probably a handful of other reasons why, even if you get there, it's going to be short lived. But we get swept up in that. People get swept up in that idea that, I don't know that I want to look inward and try to reinvent the wheel as something unique or authentic to myself when that guy already carved a path. I'm just going to do what he did. And that's that simple monkey see, monkey do mindset that I think it's tempting. It's tempting for people, but yeah, it's not what you want to do. It's not the right way, like you said, to build sustainability.
Yeah. There's a guy named Naval Ravikant, and someone recommended a book. I think it's a collection of all his tweets and things like that. But he was an investor, still around, made a shitload of money, but he's a principled guy. And something he said really sticks out to me. He says, when you are your authentic self, right, you really have no competition because no one can compete with you on being you. And when you look at, we want to be the next Amazon, or we want to be the next Walmart, like how many people think and want that? You can't, right?
No.
What makes you different? And, using metrics like we're bigger, we have a nicer office, we have more people, we have this client, right? We have, you put a well-known logo on your website, but you did like production work for them. This trickery, that doesn't mean you're better. That just
Yep.
means you just have these conditions around you. And the pressure is there, right? All the pressure we're taught in school, like, these guys are great. These billionaires are leaders. Have a different opinion. I believe they're ill. I believe that, remember that show Hoarders? What a horrible show, but it really it was like a sideshow. Showing these people this horrible sickness, or they're hoarding this and that, right? Living in horrible conditions. What's the difference between hoarding money and that? The only difference is we'll put them on the cover of a magazine and call them Man of the Year. It's still the same sickness. It's still not healthy for anybody. They're hurting themselves, they're hurting others, right? So we haven't mentioned my book, have we?
We have not yet. I have that on my list to talk to you about. So I'd
All
love to
this
talk
stuff is
about
in
that.
my book I talk about.
Yeah. So the book is called Build Your Brand Like You Give a Shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Embrace your purpose to unleash your potential.
when does it come out? Is it out already?
It's not out. It's in design. So my friends out in Oregon are designing. We're close to the milestone where we're getting it. bids for printing, but it'll be out this summer. And it's a bit of a rant and commentary, but also a guide on not falling for all these gimmicks and hacks to try to grow your brand, taking a more
Well,
authentic, real approach to doing it the right way.
yeah, what's interesting about that, and I just want to kind of layer this in there because I don't know that most clients realize they're falling or steering into the gimmicks and the hacks. They kind of see it as solution. And it's funny
Mhm.
because a lot of the things we've been talking about and a lot of the things that I'm sure are anecdotal in your book is that most people would agree with it. When you give it to them like we've been talking about it, most people are going to go, yeah, that makes all the sense in the world. But then when they get swept into the process or they get, sold the snake oil from company X, they're like, okay, well, if that's what you recommend I do, then I guess I do it. They kind of forget
Right.
themselves in the process. And that's what I work. I'm sure you do the same, but I work with my clients to kind of see past some of that. And
Yeah.
again, not everything is one size fits all, but think about how it fits you. And if it doesn't fit you, it's probably not a good idea.
Well, we all have a tendency to try to understand the problem, right? And, we have a completely different perspective on branding and marketing strategy than our clients do. And, like we were talking about earlier before we jumped on, it's like, you know, what seems obvious to us is brilliant to them. And, we lose sight of that. And I'm very cognizant of it because I want to make sure that we're talking in our client's language, not in some, secret code jargon and nomenclature. But, clients are coming with a perceived solution to a problem they don't quite understand fully. And they see symptoms and they say, oh, you know, we need a new website. And the first thing, that's the catalyst for the conversation, which is great. And I always ask why. And we try to unpack that before we decide to move any further. And that's not after they're paying us or anything. It's just having conversations. Because I want to know what I really want to know what the causes of these things are, not the symptoms. We want to make the symptoms go away, not by band-aiding them, but by removing the cause, but also looking beyond the current pain because there's more waiting, right? So, we need a new website. Why? Well, it doesn't say the right thing. Well, okay. Well, what's the right thing? What's the right message? Oh, we're working on that internally. Okay. Well, who's your website for? For our customers. Well, describe them. Why do they care? And it's like, okay, or it's dated. It's hard to manage, right? All those things, right? It's like, okay, well, sure, we can address all that, but it's like a deeper dive. So we know that before we start pushing pixels and designing and building your next website, you don't end up in the same predicament you're in now and spending a bunch of money to just have a fresher problem. Let's take the time to really focus on and clarify who you are, what you do, for whom, what's important to them. How does this align with your business goals, your business strategies, your opportunities? What your competition doing? Let's make sure we can position you as different and better. Then we can start pushing pixels, right? Not coming in saying, we need a new website. Great. Let's start. Cost this much. Slow down. Because if we don't know how to evaluate what's appropriate, what's good, what's going to get you those results you want for your business, and how do we know what's right? Well, we don't. What's going to end up happening is we're going to, so, an agency is going to do what they think is right, or they're going to placate to some leadership who wants it to make them feel good, make them look cool, right? Fluffing an ego, blowing smoke, whatever. And we have no interest in that because that's not helping. It's just taking another transaction, taking their money, delivering something, hope it works, right? Nah, I have no interest in that. I only have interest in doing it in a way that we've proven with our frameworks and approach is a way to get results that are focused on two things: what's best for the brand and what's best for the future customer. And those are questions that we want everybody to be asking at all times when they're making decisions around their business, not just around their marketing, personnel, office space, whatever, right? Do we open a new office? Is this what's best for the brand? Is this what's best for our customers? Your team's part of the brand, right? Should you give them a raise before buying an office? Like, what are you doing, right? So, but that question takes a lot of guts to ask, but it takes a hell of a lot of clarity to answer. And that's our first start of our process. That's what we start. We get them the confidence to ask and answer that question concisely, not in 500 words, right? In as few words as possible. But not just that, it's got to be practical, tangible, and tactical. The entire team needs to be saying the same thing. Your customers need to be saying the same thing. Your potential customers need to be saying this. Your peers, your competition need to be saying the same thing, right? And that's what we start with, right? Before anything else, before implementation, before activation, before enablement, before growth. But with all that information, right, we know who we are, we know what we do, we know who we do it for. Let's think about how easy it is to make decisions now. Is this a good idea? I don't know. Is it going to make us money? Yeah. That's not how you make decisions, because that money could come at a very steep cost.
Well, and it needs to align with your overall direction of your brand. I think
Absolutely.
that's the one
Yeah.
thing, the idea of the tactical items, the website, the social media, whatever, they become pretty utilitarian in the process because most people forget to connect those dots, or
Mm-hmm.
how does A affect B and if B affects C and so on. And if they're not thinking that way, they could just be pushing the wrong buttons and pulling the wrong levers. So it's funny because one of the things, and we can kind of wrap this up, but one of the things I think that's worth mentioning too is a lot of people set the budget before they realize what they're doing with it. They go into their next year saying, "Hey, we've got $100,000 marketing budget for next year." And it's like, cool. But what are you doing with it? It's like, well, I don't know. We haven't figured that out yet, but we've got $100,000 budgeted.
Right.
Well, you might have a $200,000 problem. You probably
Yeah.
should have figured that out first, then set the
Right.
budget. Or maybe your budget's way too big. Maybe you only need a $50,000 budget this year. I mean, either way you look at it, like it cracks me up, and I find that kind of comical when somebody comes to me with their budget number without actually knowing what they're even going to do with it. It's
Yeah.
backwards.
Like, where did that come from? And is it a percentage? Is it what your allowance is? As marketing leadership, I feel bad for them these days because they're responsible for growth now, but they're only creating opportunities. There's someone else, or not, or a product or a website or a person that's responsible for the transaction. But all the onus falls on the marketing person, but their hands are tied with people who aren't in marketing giving them budgets
Well,
for them to
correct.
have a strategy and plan.
And the metrics that they use to measure success, if not connected to the strategy and plan, can
Yeah.
paint a horrible picture.
Yeah.
I've experienced this in my own career where somebody wants to hold me accountable to a metric that I have no control over. It's just
Yeah.
how we've taught ourselves to measure it. It's like, well, just run me the profile or the analytic report and let's see how we're doing. And it's like, okay, but if we've not made one solid decision to influence that number, then the data is garbage. Why even
Right.
I'm not saying data is garbage, but in that scenario, that data is garbage.
Right.
You can't measure that as success or failure.
No, it's right. It's just part of, I mean, that is an interesting thing, right? We want to be focused on the future, right? And that is the past. So if you're looking behind you, your eyes aren't set on that future state, on the vision, right? Of course, like that is going to inform some assumptions and, due diligence you've done. Like, is this working? Do we pivot? Do we double down? But you have to be focused on the future state, right? And marketing, brand development, it's all a long game. It's why we want to grow like the tree in the forest, not that
Yeah.
tree in the lot.
Yeah, it's about kind of looking at it holistically where foundation matters, the vision, the direction matters, the actions you take to get to that vision matter. It's about being a lot more methodical about it than strategic, because I think strategy gets kind of misused or misunderstood by all the other things we were talking about. Maybe it's the analytics, maybe it's the ego. It's all those things that kind of make us not pay attention to the stuff that matters. And I think for a good solid foundation and a good solid direction for a brand, being methodical about it is one of the most important things. And it's the turtle, not the hare, right? It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Mm-hmm. Amen. Yep. Indeed.
So Bobby, I just want to close things up. Thank you for being on the podcast. I really appreciate it. And let's have you back when the book's ready. We can kind of do a
Absolutely.
launch episode and kind of talk about some of those pieces. I think pretty insightful for the listeners. And I myself would be honored to kind of throw you out there and kind of hear what you got to say about it.
It'd be my pleasure. I love pontificating on all these things all day, and we get along great.
So awesome. Thank you for being on the podcast, and we'll have you on again soon. If you'd like to learn more about CyberDogs, share your thoughts, or even ask a specific question about this episode and/or the brand retro mindset, contact me directly at mike@cyberdogsmarketing.com.